Madam Clerk, you are live.
Thank you. All right, boom. It is 5:01 by my watch, and we are beginning the regular meeting of the governing body of the city of Santa Fe in our council chambers, live at 200 Lincoln Avenue. I don't know that Lincoln Avenue is funny, but Councilor Lindell thinks Lincoln Avenue is funny. We will begin with the zooming in presence of Councilor Maraworth to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Salute to the New Mexico flag led by the physically present Lee Garcia, Councilor, and an invocation of remembrances led off by Councilor Chavez. Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Salute the flag, state of New Mexico.
Thank you. So tonight I had something planned and then of course had the opportunity to be inspired by a student that was in my office. So I had a student in my office today who made a poor decision. I always say there's no such thing as bad kids. There's just kids that make poor choices. We were having a conversation and I was asking him, why did you do this? Why did you make this choice? And he put his head down and he said, Miss, life is just really hard. And so I found myself convincing him to be hopeful in himself and his future and the success that he deserved, that should be rightfully his. I was convincing him to find hope in his skills and his ability. And I was fighting this fight and just to convince him of having that hope that it could get him to the future that he was deserving of. And I thought that we probably could all use a little motivation in regards to being hopeful. So I wanted to read a quote from Barack Obama. Hope is that thing inside us that insists, despite all evidence to the contrary, that something better awaits us if we have the courage to reach for it and to work for it and to fight for it. Hope is the belief that destiny will not be written for us, but by us, by the men and women who are not content to settle for the world as it is, who have the courage to remake the world as it should be. It was something that I feel like we all needed to hear tonight. I think it was something that student needed to hear, that he needed to have hope in rewriting the story that he has been living because he's deserving and better. And as city officials, I feel like it is our job to contribute to that process for our youth in making this world a better place. And I hope that we do some of that tonight and in our future work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Are there remembrances at this time? Yes, go ahead, Councilor Cass.
Thank you, Mayor. Every year at this governing body meeting around this time, I take the moment to honor my grandfather who passed in 2007. And he's always just been such an incredible inspiration to me, to my brother. He was such a hardworking man and like one of the most stable people I have ever met in my life, just very nice and calm and really grounded and provided a lot of grounding for our family that we've really felt his absence since he passed, gosh, however many years ago that was, 16, 17. As I frequently mention, he also served as a city councilor and mayor of Palm Springs, California. So he would understand a lot of the work that we do. And he was just such a beacon of light for me. And so I wanted to take this moment to remember him. Thank you.
Thank you. Others? Yes, go ahead.
I also wanted to take a quick moment to remember Julio de Santiago. He was an amazing mariachi born in Mexico City. He came in the last few years to the Albuquerque conference and he passed away today. So que en paz descanse.
Thank you, Councilor Elder. I would add just a general prayer for those who are suffering in our community, the challenges, physical, emotional, economic, people who are struggling to make ends meet. And we wish we could help everyone in Santa Fe rise up and live in the spirit of the prayer that we heard from in the words of President Obama. So let's take a minute and bow our heads and then keep those people in our thoughts. Very good. Thank you, everybody. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. Counselor Cassett?
Here.
Counselor Castro?
Present.
Counselor Chavez?
Here.
Counselor Faulkner?
Here.
Counselor Lee Garcia?
Here.
Counselor Michael Garcia?
Present.
Counselor Lindell? Counselor Romero Worth?
Present.
Mayor Weber?
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, are there changes to the agenda?
Yes, Mayor. Going to move item 9F to discussion so that we can vote on an amendment to that resolution.
Okay. Other changes? Very
No, Mayor.
good. I would entertain a motion to accept the agenda as amended. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, could you call the roll on that?
Certainly, Mayor. Counselor Cassett?
Yes.
Counselor Castro?
Yes.
Counselor Chavez?
Yes.
Counselor Faulkner?
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia?
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia?
Yes.
Counselor Lindell? Counselor Romero Worth?
Yes.
Mayor Weber?
Yes.
Motion pass.
Thank you. And we have, I believe, one item from the consent agenda, Madam Clerk.
Yes, Mayor, item 9E was pulled by Counselor Michael Garcia.
Thank you. Any other changes to consent?
No, Mayor.
If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll on that motion, please?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. Counselor Castro?
Yes.
Counselor Chavez?
Yes.
Counselor Faulkner?
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia?
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia?
Yes.
Counselor Lindell? Counselor Romero Worth?
Yes.
Counselor Cassett?
Yes.
Mayor Weber?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. So with that, Madam Clerk, can you, for those of us here and also watching and listening, not here in the room, could you please take us to the first item on the agenda then?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. Next item is item 8 under presentations. 8A is an audit update and overview, and we have Finance Director Emily Oster here for questions. Presenting, sorry.
Well, first presenting and then questions. You're not wrong. Go ahead, Director.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the governing body. It's nice to be with you this evening. I'm happy to report that the audit is moving forward. The auditors are conducting substantive procedures, which means they're pulling samples. They're asking questions. We're following up, and our accounting officer, Matt Bonifer, is doing a wonderful job, as is our controller, Josie Bolden, and many other city staff who are working both in the finance department and throughout the city to respond to those requests from the auditors. And, we're moving forward with FY23. That is my update on the audit for this evening. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Director. Are there questions for Director Oster about the report you just gave us? Thank you, ma'am. We'll be seeing you in a minute, but thank you for that report. Madam Clerk, next item on the agenda.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that is item 9E. It's a request for approval of a budget amendment resolution to increase the budget for fiscal year 2024 for audit preparation and accounting consulting in the total amount of $375,000. And Finance Director Emily Oster's here for questions.
And Counselor Michael Garcia pulled that. Before we turn it over to Counselor Garcia, let me just get a motion on the floor so we can have that in front of us.
Move to approve?
Second.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second, and Counselor Michael Garcia, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Director Oster, for being here this evening. So I have a couple questions regarding the additional funds being added to this contract. I know it's not an amendment to the contract, but it's adding additional resources to it. Can you clarify, because I've been trying to keep track of how much we've expended for this particular contract. To date, I think I've been able to tabulate, and maybe this is where I'll ask for your assistance, between the support for fiscal year 22 and now with their support for fiscal year 23, it's roughly $3.8 million. Am I correct in that understanding? Or if you can help me clarify, because from my math, it's for fiscal year 22, 2.1 million roughly. And then for fiscal year, it's not 3.8, sorry, it's 2.1, 3.2 million-ish, 3.3. So ultimately, can you just help me understand what we've expended thus far for the fiscal year 22 and 23 support for this particular contract?
Mr. Mayor and Counselor Garcia, certainly I can give you approximate numbers now, and I'm happy to follow up with exact actuals. As far as the expenditures against the contract, we expended just over $2 million during FY23, and that was primarily on audit support for FY21 audit and starting to work on the FY22 audit as well with Clifton Larson Allen. And then now in FY24, we've expended, as of now, a little bit over $2 million. We're on track to spend a little bit more than $3 million during the current fiscal year, FY24. But as of now, the current spend is around 2.1 million.
Okay, so just doing some quick math. Fiscal year 23, we spent 2 million, fiscal year 24, 3 million. So we spent over $5 million on this contract thus far.
Mr. Mayor and Councilor Garcia, we haven't yet spent 3 million in the current fiscal year. We've spent about 2, a little bit over 2, but we're, in February. So we're going to spend more for the remainder of the fiscal year.
Right, you anticipated $3 million.
For FY24.
Okay. And so with that being said, I know that there were some questions around building capacity for this work that's being done, because ultimately the work being done by CLA, CLA, CRA, we're talking about CLA now, Clifton Larson Allen. The work that they're doing is historically completed by city staff. And so it definitely brings concern to me when we spent $5 million to do the work that staff has traditionally done. And the way I look at it is, what capacity has been built? Because even if you break it down to number of employees that could have been hired at that, for that $5 million, and we can say just an off average, let's say $70,000 a year salaried employee with Benny's, it's about $100,000. That's roughly 50 employees we could have paid for their support. And so I'm concerned because I think we're going to need their support for the fiscal year 24 audit. I don't believe we've built up the capacity to complete the 24 audit on our own. Then I start thinking about fiscal year 25 audit and beyond. And so it was mentioned during the Finance Committee on Monday that there is cross training being done. But that also concerns me. I mean, to me, that's a short-term fix, because long-term, we don't want employees doing multiple roles, because then what happens in the position when that employee leaves, it puts us much more in a bind. And so my question is, what is the plan in regards to filling the vacant positions? That way we can no longer need the services of Clifton Larson Allen. And if there is a plan, do we have a timeline for it? Because I'd like us to begin to have a strategic plan, in the sense, by fiscal year 25, we're not going to be utilizing these services anymore. So I'll let, if you can help me understand what the next steps are, because cross-training to me is not the solution in a extremely challenging situation like this.
Certainly, Madam Mayor, Mr. Mayor and Councilor Garcia, members of the governing body. So high level, I would say, to address what capacity has been built. At the height of the pandemic, the finance department exceeded 40% vacancy. Currently, we're at 23%. The current number of vacant positions that we have in finance is 13, which is the lowest since I've been here with the city. So that's about 18 months. In July, we had 19 vacancies. So, we've had some folks leave, we've had other folks come, but we've reduced our vacancies from 19 to 13 in about 7 months. So I'm really proud of that. We are making progress on filling our positions. We have 4 positions currently advertised that close next week. We're moving forward with recruitments. We've got more advertising by the end of this week. So we're absolutely moving forward with recruitment and trying to fill positions. Now, that being said, there are some areas, I'll use our procurement manager position as an example. We've recruited for that one 5 times. We've offered it at least 3 times, and no one has accepted. There's just exceptional demand for people with that skill set. And we're having trouble, catching a great candidate, but that doesn't mean we've stopped trying. We still have that position advertised. So we'll get somebody. Hopefully this round will be, the time. But in the meantime, as we're focusing on our number 1 priority, which is getting caught up on the audits, and we are doing that. We've finished 21, 22. We're about 3 months out from finishing FY23. CLA is critical to helping us maintain the pace that we're working at, while we're also doing things like recruiting, because that takes managers away from doing the actual work, but it's critical that we keep working on these recruitments, interviewing, filling positions. So we're doing both. And really, I would say, in terms of what capacity has been built, I would point to the vacancy rate going from 40% to 23%. And that's not where we want it to be. We're not stopping. My goal that I've established for the team is to get it to 6 by the end of this fiscal year. So we're, doing everything we can. To the extent that there are people out there that want to work, we're hiring. And, so I would use that as an opportunity to invite everyone that might be watching or listening to check out the city's website and apply. We have some great opportunities in procurement, in our controller division, in our grants division, and in our fleet division. So we have lots of positions advertised. On Monday night in the finance committee, we had the pleasure of introducing 2 new staff members. We're going to be continuing to do that in finance committee. We'll introduce new team members as they come on board. So we aren't where we want to be yet, but we are getting close. We're making progress. As far as the timeline and the plan for filling vacant positions, I would really say as fast as we can and as long as it takes. We're doing everything that we can to get the positions recruited. We're working with the communications team to share information about the job postings on social media, and really just get the word out. And also, getting audits done is demonstrating success. So I think that's helping with our recruitment as well. As far as cross-training, I just wanted to clarify what I meant by that. And I really do think that there's value in having our team be able to pivot quickly and have one person know what someone else is doing, even if it's just for a short time, So say someone goes on a cruise and takes a week off of work. We don't want their function to stop for a week. We'd like to be able to shift resources and have, someone else step in on a limited basis. I absolutely hear the concern about, overloading staff by taking on the work of vacant positions. And that's actually really where CLA is helping us. The workloads are still very high, but CLA is adding additional bandwidth to help us address those vacancies across the finance department.
Thank you, Director Oster. I appreciate that. And by no means was I trying to minimize the impact of cross-training. I'm a firm believer of it. I mean, I remember back in my days in undergrad working at a restaurant, I learned how to do every single job within that restaurant, from washing dishes to managing the books. So I'm a firm believer in that, but I also want to make sure that we, as you mentioned, don't overwork our team members. Because that will lead to folks either leaving the city or not wanting to join the team because they know that the workload is high. You had mentioned you've got 13 vacancies, but only 4 are posted. Why are the other 9 not posted? Why are we not actively recruiting for all 13 positions?
Mr. Mayor and Councilor Garcia, that's a good question. The positions are in different stages of the process. A couple of them we're working on changes to the job descriptions, adjusting the responsibilities so that, slows down the process a little bit, but we want to make sure that we're hiring folks with the skills that we really need to perform the work. I agree with you. I would like to have all 13 of those positions posted. There are several that are in the same classification. For example, we have 2 project specialist positions. One of them is posted, but if we get a good candidate pool, we could potentially hire both positions off of the one recruitment. So the same is true with the accounting financial analyst. We have multiple vacancies in that classification. One of them's posted and we could hire multiple candidates if we find, that we have a good pool. So hopefully that answers your question.
It does. Thank you. So out of the 4 that are currently posted, how many of those 4 positions entail the work that Clifton and Larson Allen is currently working on for the city?
Mr. Mayor and Councilor Garcia, the 4 that are currently posted are a procurement manager, a heavy equipment mechanic, an accounting financial analyst, and a project specialist. The heavy equipment mechanic and fleet, I would say that's different work than what Clifton Larson Allen is helping with us. Procurement, there might be some overlap, but primarily, they don't utilize Clifton Larson Allen as much. The accounting financial analyst and the project specialist, I would say there's more overlap with what Clifton Larson Allen is helping us with. The project specialist positions, there's 2 of those. One is in accounts payable and one's in treasury. One works at the cashier's office and the other helps with accounts payable processing. It's more the traditional accounting skill set that Clifton Larson Allen is bringing to the table. And then the accounting financial analyst in the grants division is definitely an area where we're leveraging Clifton Larson Allen.
Okay, thank you. So half of the positions posted are dealing with it, the other half, not so much. And so I guess my recommendation is let's begin to post for as many of the positions as we can for the work that's being conducted by Clifton Larson Allen. Because as I mentioned earlier, as we did the tabulation of the resources, this contract has costed us $5 million. That is a good deal amount of resources to get work done that traditionally has been done by city staff. And that's just right now. I mean, we're going to need their support for fiscal year 24. I mean, given that audit will be due in 10 months, I don't know if we're going to have a full staff capacity that is trained and ready to complete an audit by hopefully December 15th, 2024. So we need to get out of the cycle of using Clifton Larson Allen and get in the cycle and process of building the capacity for you and your team. And so if we can get an update next meeting in regards to the plan for these other 9 positions and more so focused on the work that Clifton Larson Allen is conducting and how it overlaps with these positions that haven't been posted yet. And if we can get a timeline of when we expect for them to be posted, because without us having them posted and us trying to recruit folks, it just further kind of gives the foundation understanding that we're going to continue to need outside support, whether if it's Clifton Larson Allen or somebody else. And I'd rather have a fully trained staff doing that work versus an outside entity. And I'm thankful for the work that they've been doing because they've got us through these audit challenges that we've kind of had to endure. But having a fully trained staff that builds that capacity to ensure we don't ever get in this situation again. Because if we become reliant on the contractor, it's almost like we're saying, well, we're just going to outsource these jobs. And I'm not saying that's the intention by any means, but when we're not even posting the positions, that brings me concern. So if we can get an update when these positions are going to be posted that conduct the work that is traditionally conducted by our audit team. So next question is, as I was trying to look up the contracts with Clifton Larson Allen, I couldn't find any amendments. I found the original contract that we signed back in August of 22, I believe. That was a 1-year contract, and it was set to expire that following June of 23. And I couldn't find any additional contracts that extended it, because in that initial contract, it was for 1 year up to multiple years after if we agreed to it. And so I didn't know if we had agreed to it, if there was any amendments to the contract, if there was, who approved the amendments, et cetera, because I couldn't find anything going through years of governing body meeting minutes and agendas. And if there is any amendments to it, can you please share that info with me?
Mr. Mayor and councilors, Councilor Garcia. So the Clifton Larson Allen contract was approved in 2022 by the governing body. It was at the governing body meeting on August 10th of 2022, and it's item number 22-0401. I have it in front of me here, and the term has an automatic renewal clause. So I don't want to read the whole thing, but the first part says the initial term of this agreement shall terminate on June 30th, 2023, unless terminated pursuant to the termination clause or the appropriation clause. Then later on in the same paragraph, it says this agreement shall automatically renew for 3 successive additional 1-year terms, renewal years, terminating June 30th, 2024, June 30th, 2025, and June 30th, 2026, respectively, unless the city at its option and its sole discretion provides notice of non-renewal to contractor at least 90 days before the termination date of any renewal year as specified above. So at the end of last fiscal year, I took a look at this contract with our CPO, and we determined that based on that language, there was not an amendment necessary. It's automatically renewed, and it will do that for the next 2 fiscal years unless the city provides notice 90 days before the termination date.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So that's why I couldn't find anything. So I appreciate that. So in essence, this contract with CLA is up until 2026, providing support, I'm assuming, with the 25 audit. And unless we give 90 days to terminate it. And so I think that's a good time frame for us to work back off of at minimum. I'd say let's shoot for the stars to see if we can have their final year be 2024. And we have that extensive training given to new staff that's going to get hired, that's going to ultimately complete the 25 audit. Because again, I think that's the ultimate goal I would want for us to strive for, is to have a full staff to do the audit work, not an external contractor. With that, no other questions, just the $5 million mark brings me pause and very much concern. And it can be much more invested elsewhere. And when, you know, folks say that, you know, the audits haven't cost us much, it's cost us $5 million to get this done. It's cost us, I mean, it'd be interesting to get the amount of number that we're having to use for the fiscal sponsorship we have. And I would not be surprised when the bonding entities conduct a review and we are now under fiscal sponsorship with somebody else, that our bond ratings dip. I mean, that's something that is usually taken into consideration when bonding entities are reviewing financials, and so much more work to be done. Thank you. I appreciate it. And I look forward to the update on the plan for posting positions that will ultimately build the capacity to get the audits done on our own watch and not needing the support of an external contractor. So thank you, Director Oster. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Councilor Merriworth, your hand is up in the Zoom window if you want to take the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. But a few things I think we need to clarify, a few things I think would be helpful for public understanding. We did pull this item at Finance, and we had a very good conversation with Director Oster about this contract, what was being done. And I want to make a distinction here. And Director Oster, I think you can speak to this. What we're being asked to be approving tonight is not a contract amendment, but a budget amendment, resolution, or what's called a BAR. Can you speak to the difference, please? We're not, and I think the key point here is we're not adding money to this contract. We already have a contract that gives us some room to draw down on a particular level of money depending on our need. I mean, I may not be saying that well, so I'm going to kick it to you to help the distinction.
Mr. Mayor and councilors, Councilor Merriworth, thank you for that question. So that is correct. The item for approval this evening is a budget adjustment resolution to add funding to the existing contract. We're not requesting an amendment to the contract. The difference is that our agreement with Clifton Larson Allen, which has been in place since it was approved by governing body in August of 2022, is sufficient to meet our needs. We had hoped that we wouldn't need to fully fund this contract. We are identifying areas where we'd like to leverage Clifton Larson Allen's assistance at this point in FY24. I'd really like to talk a little bit about what we're asking Clifton Larson Allen to do, because it reflects a big shift. For FY21 and FY22, mostly FY22, but also a little bit on FY21, Clifton Larson Allen did a lot of the work for us. They prepared the supporting documentation, we reviewed and accepted it, and Carr Riggs Ingram audited it. For FY '23, there's been a little bit of a shift, but we were still relying quite a bit on Clifton Larson Allen to prepare the documentation for audit. For FY '24, I sat down with the leadership team in the accounting part of the finance department, and we came up with a list of areas where we felt that we could take things back and we could do the work on our own. Some areas where we felt that with training and support from Clifton Larson Allen, we would be able to do that work on our own for FY '24, and other areas where we, have, for example, vacant positions and we needed more bandwidth to do the actual work. So I'm really proud of the fact that we are at that point where we've had the conversation internally and we've decided, okay, we can take this back. We're going to have Clifton Larson Allen do this. In some areas, they have institutional knowledge from having performed the city's audits in previous fiscal years. That's really helpful, and they're able to do the work much more efficiently than we could. So we're really being strategic, and we're really thinking about how to work with Clifton Larson Allen in a way that they're transferring knowledge, they're documenting the knowledge and the processes that have been developed. We're asking them to prepare procedures, written documentation, provide training, answer questions from team members that are working on tasks that were done by Clifton Larson Allen for FY '22 and FY '23. So as far as the distinction between a contract amendment and a budget adjustment, a contract amendment would be changing our agreement with the vendor, and we're not proposing to make any changes. The agreement that we already have is sufficient to meet our needs. When we first did the budget for FY '24, we were projecting that we would be completing 2 audits during FY '23. It's turned out that FY '24 is our year that we're finishing, the last of the audits. We're getting caught up. So some of the work has shifted from FY '23 into FY '24. And really, like I said, I think we're continuing to focus in the finance department on our goal of completing the FY '23 audit so that we can be on time for FY '24. I think that we're on track to do that. I think Clifton Larson Allen's role in that is important. And we're working to transfer knowledge from Clifton Larson Allen to city staff, particularly as we look ahead to the FY '24 audit. Of the audits that I've been involved in here at the city, FY '24 is the first one where we're working on preparing for the audit during the fiscal year. And that's very exciting. That is really, really a huge improvement. Clifton Larson Allen is giving us the bandwidth to do that. And this funding is adding resources to support that work. We could push this off. We could wait until after July 1st when the new budget takes effect. But, that's not the best practice. We want to be moving as quickly as we can. So, the reason I'm bringing forward this budget adjustment resolution is so that we can continue our work to complete the audits as quickly as possible and be on track for an on-time submittal of the FY '24 audit by December of this year. So again, circling back to the question about a budget adjustment versus a contract amendment would propose to change some aspect of the agreement that we have with the vendor. We're not doing that here. We're requesting to add additional resources to the contract that's already in place.
Yeah, and some of the things that we might do to change a contract would be maybe, and we see these things all the time, where we extend the time frame to do the work, or we haven't put enough. The contract isn't for enough money, and so we have to add money. I think those are some of the big ones. Is there others that I'm not thinking of?
Mr. Mayor and Councilor Romero Worth, sometimes there are changes to the scope of the work that we need done. So that could be a reason for a contract amendment. Really there's a lot of different reasons that we might need to amend a contract, but those aren't applicable in this case. The contract that we have is sufficient to do the work that we need. We just don't have enough resources to continue at the pace that we've been going.
Right, so sorry about that. So, but the big ones tend to be extend the time period, extend the scope in some way. Maybe we want them to do more than we had initially thought, or we don't need them to do as much as we initially thought. Or we didn't, the work, for some reason changes in what it costs. And so we have to add more money to the contract. So some of those are typical things. I think it's also interesting that the budget adjustment resolution, you're talking about the fact that we didn't fully fund it. So we have a dollar amount that we can use with Clifton Larson Allen, but I think we're hopeful that we will continue to fill positions, and as we do that, we may not need to lean on them as much. And so, and to your point about the amount of work that we're asking, because we are on track to finish 3 audits in a year, that is requiring us to pull down more funding from the total amount of this contract. And I guess the other thing I would just point out, and then I'll let you speak to any of this, this idea, it's not just about cross-training, right? Cross-training, really important pieces, has been noted, but also just the transferring of knowledge, the work that they've been doing, training our staff, transferring that knowledge that they have so that we can do this on our own in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Councilors. Councilor Romero Worth, I absolutely agree. And I think, we are making progress towards our goal by filling vacancies and by shifting from a place where Clifton Larson Allen is doing the work to a place where Clifton Larson Allen is documenting processes and training city staff on how to perform the work.
Great. And, I think we're also, you mentioned our vacancy rate, which is down, and, but still it's hard to hire these positions. Some of these financial positions are very sought after, not just in government, but in the private sector as well. And so we continue to try to hire these positions. And it's exactly, the fact that we have vacancies and we don't want to overwork our staff, that we are relying on on a consultant to do this work, because we are cognizant of the toll this takes on the staff and the need to make sure that we're not asking people to do, an unreasonable amount of work, even though 3 audits in a year is quite a lot of work. So there is a balance there. And I don't know if you want to speak to that at all, but that might just be a comment.
Mr. Mayor and Councilors, Councilor Romero Worth, I think I've experienced this everywhere that I've worked. There's a labor shortage of people with accounting skills. I sometimes would refer to it as a game of reverse musical chairs. Someone moves from one chair to another, but there's an empty seat. We had so much trouble at the state with finding people with appropriate qualifications to serve as chief financial officers for state agencies. They have 120 state agencies. Every one of those needs financial professionals. So, the shortage of people in the accounting field is really acute, and it's affecting not only all levels of government, but also the private sector, consultants. One of the things that Clifton Larson Allen brings to the equation is the ability to attract a national talent pool. That's huge. They have access to a network of professionals around the country that are working with us to help accomplish what we are trying to do. So, this is something that one of our audit committee members who has served on a number of boards and was chair of the Public Accountancy Board in California has noted that, this problem of not having enough accountants and not having enough people to do this type of work is really, like I said, very acute throughout the country. Even states like California have trouble with this. So, I think this is something that we're always going to face is, that reverse musical chairs where, someone moves into a new position, they bring great skills. there's always going to be another seat open, so finding ways to utilize technology and also train people and develop staff and encourage people. Even, I've always been a big proponent throughout my career of internships. I really think that our public institutions do a great job of training people, but sometimes, at least in the accounting field, the career opportunities for people with business degrees and accounting backgrounds in government are sometimes not as well explained to people who are entering the workforce. So, one of the things that I'm really proud that we have, in addition to, having our full-time staff, we also have an intern through the Santa Fe Public Schools internship program, who is just a breath of fresh air. He's so much fun. And he is going to be going to college next year to train to be an economist, which would be amazing. And hopefully, he'll stay here in New Mexico and he'll add his financial acumen to the government sector. Whatever he does, I know he'll be very successful. But, promoting careers in government finance to people who are entering the workforce is something that I really enjoy and I feel very passionate about. So I feel that ultimately that's the solution is, developing people on a longer horizon into the financial leaders of tomorrow. So happy to have an intern right now in finance to put that in action.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And thank you for mentioning the national pool of people that we're able to draw on because of this contract. We did talk about that in finance, and I think that is really we should look at that as kind of a bonus for us, because we can also learn from other places and learn from that expertise and hopefully transfer that in some sort of mind meld in this training that's being done. The intern, I completely support, love it, and I'd forgotten about him, so really happy you mentioned that. I just also want to talk about a multi-year contract. It's also not unusual for the city to have a multi-year contract. We have lots of those, and they can be very helpful. And then a couple other things we learned in finance, that our fiscal sponsor that's going to help with some of the capital outlay that has now been released by the state. Maybe you could just speak to we got some good news. The administrative cost of using that fiscal sponsor has actually gone down. Our capital outlay has been released for maybe you could speak to the fiscal years that have now been released. And also that those fiscal sponsorship agreements, we will only be using that fiscal agent while we have an outstanding late audit. So, once May 15th comes along and we get this last audit in, we will no longer be needing that. Maybe you could just speak to that and say it better than I did.
Of order, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor
Trying to
Garcia.
understand how the contract with North Central is in relation to this money that we're approving tonight.
Well, I think you brought up the fact that we had an outside contract and it might affect our bond rating. And I think Councilor Maraworth is pursuing that.
Mine was more of a commentary, not questioning on the topic of the staff. So.
Okay, I'm happy to comment. I can do that. So we learned at finance that the city will be charged 1%, not 3%, administrative cost for any project that is run through our fiscal agent. We are also only using that fiscal agent for particular years legislative financing, and we will only need them as long as we have an outstanding audit. So I think that's good news. And so I don't like this, let's paint the world, gray. I think there's a lot that's being done here under this leadership, under this team. And, I continue to be hopeful and support the work that's going on and be thankful for the expertise that's being brought by these contracts and the leadership that Director Oster is presenting to help get us on track again and to make us less reliant on our consultant who is providing critical work at this point. And I think, let's see. Yeah, and I think, I think we continue to try to fill those vacancies. They are hard jobs to fill. If we could fill them, we'd fill them. And I know there's work being done to do that, and I hope, we can make progress and not have to use a consultant, because I would agree that we want full-time staff. We are not outsourcing this work. We are just trying to get this work done. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor. I think Counselor Lindell's hand was up next.
Thank you.
We'll just go, everybody will have a chance.
I just have a couple of comments, maybe a question in here. How many jobs do we have posted right now?
Mr. Mayor and Councilor Lindell, we have 4 classifications posted, but they could be used to fill, I'm gonna say six positions.
Okay, how long have they been posted?
I can look that up. Most of them close next week, and we typically post for 2 weeks. So I'm gonna say about a week.
Was this the first posting of them?
For some it was, for others not. One of them is the procurement manager, which has been posted 5 times.
Okay, so we post these, it's hard to hire these people, right?
Madam, Mr. Mayor and Councilor Lindell, absolutely. The demand for accountants and procurement professionals, also in the area of fleet, the heavy equipment mechanics. I noticed that I think 4 other city departments also had postings for heavy equipment mechanics. So, I can speak more specifically to finance, but there are other classifications as well, particularly those that require things like a commercial driver's license, where it's hard to find people. There are more jobs than there are people with the skill set.
So I know we've been working on that, and it's not at all unusual for the city to use outside contractors. We do that in practically every department because we're shorthanded. We certainly have contracts in water, city attorney's office contracts out different things, Public Works does, Parks and Rec. It is not uncommon. Certainly, we had plenty of discussion earlier on about how much these contracts were. I remember being rather unhappy about it at the time, but here's the thing. We said we need to do whatever it takes to get these audits done. And as a council, we voted for these contracts. That's all. Thanks, Mayor.
You had your hand up next, Counselor, and then I'll just look for hands as they go up. I know that there's pretty much a round robin of folks with their hands up.
I have 2 questions.
You gotta get closer.
One, I was on the council when this happened, so is there like a bucket of funding put aside to manage this contract, and the $5 million is within that capacity for funding the contract? Is that kind of what it?
Mr. Mayor and Councilor Faulkner, so we're budgeting for this contract each fiscal year. So the first year of the contract was FY23. We budgeted $3 million for the contract in FY23. In FY24, the current fiscal year, we originally budgeted $2 million. We had hoped that we would be able to reduce our reliance on Clifton Larson Allen. The workload ended up shifting more into the current fiscal year, and we've utilized their services more because we've been doing more work, completed 2 audits. We're on our way to our 3rd. So as far as there's not a total amount allocated across the full term of the contract. We're budgeting for it for each fiscal year. So as part of our budget proposal for FY 25, there will be an amount allocated to contractual support in the finance department, which is primarily for this contract.
And then the other question is, and you don't have to give an exact number, but to say this $5 million that we've devoted to this thus far, what percentage of the total city budget is that? I mean, just a guesstimate.
Mr. Mayor and Councillor Faulkner, so our FY 24 budget is, the original was about $413 million. So let me do the math for you there. That does include utilities. So let's see. So, 1%, a little bit over 1% of the total city budget. And that's the budget for 1 year. And we're talking about 3 years worth of audits. So I think, I want to say 1%, but that's a ratio of 1 year's budget to 3 years of audits.
Just a comment, like I would imagine this is a wise investment, given where we were as a city with the audits, right? That would just be my.
Thank you, Counselor. I think, Counselor Garcia, you're up next, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Director Oster, for all the information. What I'm trying to get out of this, and I think it is important for the public to understand, where we are, where we were, where we're going. But I think that what's most important for me in this conversation is that the point is that we're spending X amount of dollars on an outside contractor. And that's an expense to the city. And we're spending X amount of dollars in overhead to our employed staff that we have. And that's a cost to the city. And when you put all of that together, we're trying to figure out how much is this really costing us as a city and the taxpayer, because bottom line, it's the taxpayers' money. We had a great conversation at finance in regards to, I think one of the questions I had was similar to Councilor Garcia's in regards to, okay, when do we start, not having to utilize this outside contractor as much? And the bottom line is that we need them, but at what cost? And so what point do we make a managerial decision that states, okay, well, we're not able to handle it in-house, so we're going to have to use these outside contractors. And that seems to be the case, as Councilor Lindell stated. I don't think there's any department in this city that doesn't use contractors. And so, I think that a lot of times just our own bureaucracy, so to speak, ends up making it difficult for us to do the jobs that we're supposed to do. And so the takeaway that I get from this is that what point do we either decide we go to contractors and minimize staff, or do we just focus on putting more staff, getting rid of the contractors, making the good managerial decision for the best of our community, for the best of our citizens of Santa Fe, and not forgetting that I think there's not a councilor up here that isn't going to be behind the city getting these financial audits in, because that is the bottom line and that's important. And so, I think it's good conversation to have, that we all know where we at, where we stand, because when you start adding costs, that sure is going to come from somewhere. It's got to come from our operating budget somewhere, from our general fund. We're pulling money from somewhere, and a lot of times we don't know where that's coming from. Well, we do, but it's really intricate, and you got to really dive into where this money is being moved from, the general fund, from wherever. And so we only have so much money to deal with, and I think it's just important that we do know and understand the overall cost of what this is. And there's a lot absorbed from the city side, and then we do see what the contract is costing us, and so that kind of hurts, because we see it's like, wow, why can't we just do this? And I get it. I run a business and we're short-staffed, but still have to get it done. And that's just the bottom line. So I appreciate all the dialogue from everyone. And I do appreciate the hard work that you are doing, because I really truly see that we are getting somewhere. And we just have to walk that fine line of how much is this costing us really at the end of the day. And so, we want to reduce that as much as possible. And I think that everyone up here really has that in their heart and in their mind as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor. I think Counselor Cassett has her hand up, and if you change your mind, let me. Counselor Cassett, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I always think that it's important as we are kind of doing an excavation of what happened, to recall some decisions that we made that brought us here. So we're talking contract for FY 21, 22, and 23 audits. I want to remind everybody that in FY 21, we actually froze finance at 40%. So it's not just that we had a 40% vacancy rate. We froze the finance department at that 40% vacancy rate for one fiscal year, Does anybody remember how long we had that frozen? And I know you weren't here yet, Director Oster, do you recall?
Mr. Mayor and Councilor Cassidy, I think it was for maybe a year and a few months. And I would also add that was, the height of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Correct. And that was exactly why we did freeze at that 40% vacancy rate. So, it's not as if we've been trying to fill these positions that entire time. As has already been discussed, these are already really challenging positions to fill. I also think it's important that we talk about the decisions that we're making. We are not making a decision right now between this contract and the ideal world where we are fully staffed. There is not a piece of this contract that says we need to fill this contract, so we are going to defund some of these positions. We are still trying to fill every single one of these positions. The decision we are making here is, do we put dollars towards this contract to fill the gap caused by the fact that it's really hard to fill these positions so we can get these audits in, or not? Or do we not fund this work and we don't get our audits in? I think everybody has expressed numerous times that the most important thing we can do is to get this audit in. And every single time you come up, we always say, tell us what you need. Anything that you need to get this done. This is the most important thing for you. This is the most important thing for the city. This is the most important thing for our staff. And so we tell you every single time, tell us what it is that you need. Have we given you enough? Do you need more? And you usually say, nope, you've given us what we need. And so you're telling us this is what we need, or what you need in order for us to get this done. As we have asked you to do, gosh, who knows, hundreds of times has that come out of one of our mouths. Don't quote me on that. I don't actually count. But so I do think that that's really important, that we have told you, come to us, tell us whatever it is that you need. You are not defunding positions, key positions, in order to fund these contracts. These contracts are filling the gap. We are continuing to look at what it is that we need to do to be more competitive to get these positions filled. We've had a lot of conversations around class and comp recently. That is going to be a continuing conversation as we move into budget season and as we start to make some big decisions around what our priorities are, and how we start to get to that place where we are fully staffed. I know that that is the ideal world, not just for the finance department, but for every single department in the city. I also know that it is rare for us to ever be completely fully staffed in any department. People are going to retire, people are going to move, people are going to have other opportunities that they want to take. And that's just part of the professional development. It doesn't necessarily mean that they left the city because they weren't happy. There are just other opportunities that people are going to pursue. So I'm glad that we have this conversation around that longevity for cross-training. So again, how do we fill these gaps? Because inevitably there are going to be moments when we are short-staffed and we're going to have to make the decision around, all right, how do we get from A to B to make sure this really important work happens? So thank you. Thank you for telling us what you need, because we keep telling you to tell us what you need. And so I really do appreciate it. appreciate the work that your staff has done. This has been hard. I know it's been extremely hard for them. And that they feel a lot of the pressure. They really feel the weight of the entire city on their shoulders. And I'm glad we're able to give them the support. And we will continue to try to fill these key positions and making it through. But until then, this is crucial. This is crucial for everything that the audit has impacted, and we have listed those numerous times. So that is all, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Garcia, you have a?
Yeah, just quick follow-up, just based off some of the information given. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Director Oster, you had said that you budgeted 2 million for this line item this year. And then earlier tonight, you had said we're planning on spending about 3 million respectively. So where is the additional $1 million coming from, given that it wasn't budgeted for?
Mr. Mayor and Councilor Garcia, in October, we did a budget adjustment to bring forward unspent funds from FY '23 to add to FY '24. We had budgeted 3 million in FY '23. We only spent about 2, so we carried forward it was a little over $800,000. And then tonight I'm requesting approval for 375,000.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess one last clarification, just because I don't know where the misconception was from folks that this was an amendment. It's definitely not an amendment. It's adding money to the existing bill, for lack of better words. But and the reason why there's not an amendment is because the original contract allowed for $3,096,000 to be allocated per year, because we thought we wouldn't hit that threshold. That was a very high threshold. That's why there's not an amendment being brought forward, because that was a very high ceiling we set. Now, with that being said, earlier you had mentioned that we plan, or you expect or project us to hit the $3 million mark. Is it going to pass that 3,096,000, which would trigger an amendment? Just that way we can begin to plan. And ultimately, I would guess, let me ask this. My request is, if next meeting, if we can get a total number of that we've allocated for this contract this fiscal year, because then once we hit July 1, the clock starts again. We start at 0 and go up to $3 million again. And so if we can get an update next meeting, how much we spent, that way we can begin to plan or anticipate if an amendment will be needed to the contract, given that is the cap we set. So appreciate the comments from my colleagues. Thank you, Director Oster, as always. Nothing else, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Mayor Worth, your hand is up, unless it's an old hand. Is that a new hand?
It's a new hand, Mayor. Thank you. The total amount of the total amount that you're asking in this budget amendment resolution tonight is how much, Director Oster?
Mr. Mayor, councilors, Councilor Romero Worth, 375,000.
And I believe you stated earlier in the meeting that we have spent, I think, 2 million, a little over 2 million to date in this fiscal year from this contract.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, yes, I can get you an exact number, but it's in the neighborhood of 2.1 million.
Okay, so with this money tonight, if it's 2.1, we're adding 375,000. We're looking at 2.3,075,000, correct?
Maybe closer to 2.4, yes,
All
Mr. Mayor and councilors.
Okay, and I just, again, a budget amendment resolution is not a contract amendment. We're still operating within the amount of the contract. We're just basically fixing the amount of money we have on the line item for this budget at this time.
Mr. Mayor and councilors, Councilor Romero Worth, that is correct. In order to maintain the current pace and complete the FY 23 audit as soon as possible while also preparing for FY 24 so we can submit it on time. This is the amount that I estimate of additional budget authority that I need to finish out this fiscal year.
Right, and thank you for identifying where the money was coming from. I think that's helpful. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Mr. Mayor.
Counselor Garcia.
Director Oster, you had mentioned earlier 3 million, you anticipate for 3 million for this fiscal year, but now you just stated this is what you expect. So what is the number? Yeah, you had given me the numbers. Fiscal year 23, roughly 2 million, fiscal year 24, roughly 3 million. Now, moments ago, you just said roughly 2.5 million. So which is it? Is it 2.5 million for fiscal year 24, or is it 3 million for fiscal year 24 that you stated earlier this evening?
Mr. Mayor and councilors, Councilor Merworth, I think maybe where the confusion is coming from is we've been talking about both how much has been spent to date in FY 24 and how much has been budgeted for FY 24. And we're, still in the middle of the fiscal year, so we haven't spent the full amount that's been budgeted for the fiscal year. So please, may I have clarification on, are you asking me about how much is budgeted or how much has been spent?
I'm the overall, and from my recollection, I don't remember the exact words, but you, in a ballpark, you said you anticipate us spending $3 million in fiscal year 24 for this contract. But you had just mentioned to Councilor Romero Worth that this request for an increase is the last increase you expect, which would bring it up to 2.4, 2.5 million. So I'm a bit confused because, again, you had said I anticipate us to spend 3 million, but you just said this is the last request you anticipate, which would be roughly 2.4, that's a big gap. That's $600,000. And I definitely would like to know, do you anticipate us spending $3 million on this contract for fiscal year 24?
Mr. Mayor and councilors, Councilor Garcia, so we started, the amount in the contract is $3,096,000 per year, plus gross receipts, tax, and expenses. So based on the contract, the total amount payable can't exceed $3,096,000 per year, excluding gross receipts, tax, and expenses. So that's what's written into the contract. When we budgeted for the current fiscal year for FY 24, I was optimistic that we would only need $2 million for Clifton Larson Allen. The amount that was budgeted the prior year, FY 23, was $3 million. I was optimistic that we would only need $2 million. And, we've completed 2 audits during the current fiscal year. We're on the heels of completing a 3rd. And in order to maintain the current pace to finish FY 23 on the timeline that we've established and to continue to work towards getting FY 24 completed by December, I need to shift additional funding. I need additional resources to continue the current pace. So let me try to say this another way. So we started with a $2 million budget for this contract for contractual services for FY 24. In October, we did a budget adjustment to increase that amount by the amount that was unspent from FY 23. That was 800 and I don't have the exact number in front of me, but 800 and some $1,000. And so this is my second request for an adjustment, this current one.
Okay, so with that being said, you had 2 million budgeted. You came past fall for an increase of 800,000. So that puts it at 2.8 million. This additional 300,000 makes it 3.1 million. Más o menos.
Mr. Mayor and councilors, Councilor Garcia, yes. And
So I think let's correct the record because it was stated 2.4 million when it's 3.1 just stated. I mean, am I?
Mr. Mayor and councilors, maybe it would help with clarification to just consider the work that's being done now in FY '24. We completed the FY '21 audit at the very end of FY '23. That stretched a little bit into FY '24. It was released at the end of July. And then we completed the FY '22 audit, and now we're doing the FY '23 audit, all during FY '24. So maybe it would help to think of it in terms of the work that's actually happening in what fiscal year that work is happening in. So maybe to put it a different way, I anticipate that FY '24 will be a year where, I need more contractual support than I do in future years because of the amount of work that we're doing during FY '24.
Thank you, Director Oster. And by no means am I trying to disregard the work that's being done. I mean, mountains are being moved. I'm specifically talking about the allocation of resources, not the work that's being done. And just going by the figures you gave me, and unless you correct me, 2 million was initially allocated. We added 800,000. We're adding another 375,000. That's 3.175. So let the record state with this contract, it would trigger that threshold of going over 3 million. So I would believe that would require an amendment to the contract if it's being spent in this fiscal year. So I think, long story short, Director Oster, if we can just get an updated figure ultimately in regards to what has been spent, because I think ultimately my concern is we go above and beyond that $3,096,000 threshold we have in the contract. And if we need to create an amendment to allocate the additional resources, great, because I'm in agreement with all my colleagues. This is work that needs to be done. But I also want to ensure that we're doing everything we need to do in regards to the requirements of the contract and not put us in a position where we're allocating resources to a contract we need to ultimately fix. So thank you, Director Oster. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor and councilors, Councilor Garcia, I just want to note that in the contract, the $3,096,000 excludes gross receipts, tax, and expenses. And the numbers that I've been providing for our actual spending to date include gross receipts, tax, and expenses.
Okay, fair enough. And if we can just get a number next meeting to say, this is what's out, just a breakdown for us. That would be fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I see another hand in the Zoom room from Councilor Mayor Worth. Is that a new hand or an old hand?
New hand, Mayor. So I'm sorry, I think I may have added to the confusion, and perhaps something in writing might be helpful. So when we signed the contract says that we won't go above $3,960,000. That's how much is authorized in the contract. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's how much we're actually going to spend. It's just the contract is written to be more than what we may need, correct?
Mr. Mayor and councilors, Councilor Maraworth, so the compensation in the contract says the amount payable to the contractor under this agreement, excluding gross receipts, tax, and expenses, shall not exceed $3,096,000 per year. So that's the amount that's allocated for services. Gross receipts, taxes, and expenses are separate.
Okay, so that's a good clarification for me. So $3,096,000. Okay, so that's good for me because I had the zero in the wrong place. All right, so that's the total amount, but again, it's excluding the gross receipts tax. And did you say something else?
Mayor and councilors, it excludes gross receipts, tax, and expenses. So those would be things like travel or software costs.
Okay, and then I think we were talking about what was budgeted, And then we were talking about what was spent, and I think I confused things when I was lumping what was spent into what was budgeted. And what you're saying is you need budget authorization from us for a new dollar amount, which is basically covering the gross receipts tax and the expenses, which are excluded from the contract amount of $3,096,000.
Mr. Mayor and councilors, Councilor Merworth, absolutely. I think I'm getting a little mixed up here too, because we're talking about the budget, the contract, and the actual spending. And, you know, a lot of the numbers are similar. I'm happy to provide follow-up in writing if that would be helpful.
I think that would be helpful. I think we're, you know, in the confines of this room and in a Q&A back and forth with you, that it's easy to get numbers confused or assumptions jumbled. So why don't we not try to continue to dig the hole any deeper through back and forth, but just provide whatever numbers, and by all means, council members, go visit the director individually to clarify any questions you've got. I just wanted to change the subject briefly. How many audits have you completed this year?
Mr. Mayor and councilors, I'm delighted to say that we've completed 2 and we're working on a 3rd.
You've completed 2 audits, and when we think about how those audits were categorized among the different ways in which an audit can be categorized, what were those audits? How would you describe those audits?
Mr. Mayor, the FY21 audit, we had an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. We had a qualified opinion on the federal portion of the audit. We resolved that qualification in the FY22 audit, which is exceptional progress, something I'm very, very proud of. And in FY22, we had an unmodified opinion on both the financial statement audit and the federal compliance audit. Unmodified is the best type of opinion you can get. What it means is that external people who are using your financial statements can rely on them. They've been reviewed by an independent auditor, and the auditor has expressed their opinion that the financial information is materially correct in their opinion.
So it's not just getting the work done. The work is getting done, and the findings of the audit are very, very good for the city of Santa Fe when it comes to the work that you, your team, and to the extent we need outside consultants, are producing the documentation to get what somebody like me who's not a finance wizard would call a clean audit.
Mr. Mayor and councilors, that's absolutely true. We reduced the number of findings between the FY21 audit and the FY22 audit. We went from 22 findings to 17 findings. I'm very proud of that progress. There were 10 findings from FY21 that were resolved in FY22. Also excellent progress. You know, I'm extremely proud of the work that the finance team is doing and that all city staff are doing to help us both move quickly to complete 3 audits in a compressed time period, but also to show progress in terms of improving our financial practices and our internal controls during that time period. So yes, I think this is a very positive story for the city. We're getting these audits done and the results are showing improvement, which is exceptional.
And something to be quite, I think you and your team to be quite proud of. And I would say that when the issue of employees comes around, I have to say, again, looking at this issue in the big picture, you are an exceptional leader. You're an outstanding city director, and you attract talent because of that. People want to work for you. They want to be a part of the team you're building. I think it's an outstanding group of people. Every interaction I've had with our finance team that you're building has convinced me that they are not just technically competent, but they're deeply committed to the work they do for the city of Santa Fe. And we should be very grateful for all the energy, effort, talent, commitment, they put in, not just with audits, but all of the work that gets done to make the finance department an outstanding part of our city government that provides services across the board. And I think it's pretty clear that you are building a team of people who are substantially committed to the work they do on behalf of the people of Santa Fe. And there actually is no dichotomy between hiring great people and asking for outside support where it's needed. In fact, good management consists of doing both when that's the way that the work gets done and the people get supported so they don't get burned out by having to do more than is really within the realm of their ability to perform. One last thing I would say is I have met your intern. I would encourage the members of the media to do a story about the interns who are working for the city of Santa Fe. They are great young people. The individual in your department is a Santa Fe High senior. He is eager to be an economist, as you pointed out. He treated me to his cost benefit ratio of how much debt versus how much education he can afford, which tells me he's already on his path toward a career as a great economist, because he understands trade-offs and cost benefits. And you are, again, attracting talented people who want to be part of your operation from high school on up. And it's a real credit that that young man is sitting in your office, just sopping up all of the activity, the intelligence, the capability, the discipline, and the hard work that he gets to see on his way toward his high school diploma, but then I think even more things in the future. So that's to me, that's a great story. The ability to have these interns supporting us, but also seeing the work that gets done to make the city of Santa Fe run and run well that's priceless, as they say in TV ads. I don't have any other comments. There's a motion on the floor. Madam Clerk, could you call the roll?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. Counselor Chavez,
Yes.
Counselor Faulkner,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell, Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Cossett,
Yes.
Counselor Castro,
Yes.
Mayor Weber,
Yes.
motion passed.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Oster. And I do think following up with whatever written material can clarify some of the questions would be a useful thing, because I don't think we can dig any more out tonight. But thank you. Take us to the next item, please, Madam Clerk.
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. It's a consideration of a resolution. This is sponsored by Counselor Alma Castro and Counselor Signy Lindell. It's recognizing the city manager as the city's representative for obtaining and holding a governmental liquor license at Fort Marcy Ballpark and encouraging lessees of the city's license to use local vendors.
I understand there's an amendment that is in the works.
There is an amendment. It's to change the title and limit the license for just the Fort Marcy Ballpark for Fuego League.
Okay, so let's have an overall motion. No? I'm getting a negative look from our city attorney. I was thinking an overall motion followed by a motion to amend. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
Is there a
Move to
second?
approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and we also have someone who wishes to introduce an amendment.
So I would like to introduce an amendment so that no other entities besides the city will be using this, just the Fuego League.
And is there a second to that amendment?
Second.
We do have a second. Is there a discussion? Do you want to, Counselor, for people who aren't familiar with the details, do you want to describe the?
Sure. So in general, they had been getting individual liquor licenses for each game. And so we wanted to make it a little bit easier for them to get a liquor license overall. But I was a little uncomfortable with other entities using the city's license. I did speak to city manager about the responsibilities of being on a liquor license, and I'm comfortable that he knows the responsibility.
Other discussion? Counselor Garcia, you have a big question mark.
Packet. I'm refreshing, I'm looking online. I go through the public side, not the city side.
Oh, we don't have it in writing?
The amendment is in the packet.
Oh, I see Amendment A now. Okay, so
Good.
quick question, given we're changing the caption, this has to be moved to next meeting, right?
Mayor Weber, counselors, so if the counselors think that the public is not on reasonable notice with this change, you can certainly do that. I don't think it's particularly significant change to the caption, and this is also a resolution. So it's not a bill that requires publication in the newspaper. So the import of the caption is not as significant in terms of due process and commentary on laws. So this is more of a delegation of authority by this governing body. It doesn't impact the citizens' rights as a bill would. But certainly if you think the notice in the agenda doesn't accurately reflect the nature of what you're voting on with the amendment, then certainly and you should move to delay your vote on it. But if you think it still does reflect the nature of what you're discussing and what you're voting on, then I think it's fine.
Thank you, Madam City Attorney. And I'm just going off of our practices in the past, and I'm in full support of this amendment. But I do believe that it does change the caption, given that it's limiting who can access the liquor license. And so just to give due process to the public to be aware of what is ultimately being proposed with this legislation, even though it's not, I just think we should follow the process we've done in the past, where if the caption is changed or if something is done to require the caption change, it's got to be pushed to the next meeting. And I mean, I remember us going through these hoops for opening up the plaza for vendors. I mean, that got pushed back multiple times because there had, changes that needed to be made to the caption. And I think let's continue that same process. So that,
Mayor Weber, Councilor Garcia, a couple of things. So the Plaza one was a bill and we changed the number of events that would be allowed. So it was a pretty significant change. Due process was a reference to bills, not to resolutions. Generally, the resolutions are a policy decision of the governing body that don't involve the due process rights of the public. The issue is whether Open Meetings Act is followed. So that's why I'm saying, was the nature of the matter represented accurately on your agenda? So that's more the question I'm asking the city council to look at is, if you don't think Open Meetings Act requirements are adequately followed by the change, which means what you're discussing now is different than what's on your agenda, then certainly delay it. I think it is essentially, you've put the public on notice about what you're doing, which is delegating authority to the city manager about an alcohol license. But if you think it's substantially different and that the public hasn't been noticed about what the activity you're taking, but I'm not suggesting it's a due process problem. I'm just suggesting that you want to evaluate it from the perspective of Open Meetings Act.
Councilor Lee Garcia, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. What is the timeframe, expediency of this, and would there be a problem moving it to the next meeting?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Garcia, the lease for the ballpark and the lease for the liquor license will be held up if we don't make a decision tonight. And Fuego games will be starting soon, and we wanted to knock out the lease and both leases right away, but it's at your will.
This is basically pertaining to the liquor licenses. So let's just say, for example, gets pushed back, there's no liquor for the first game.
Well, that's
Theoretically.
I can answer that a little bit. I think the reason this has come this way, and I think Councilor Castro nailed it, was that the team and the league are attempting to take control of their own revenue stream based on beer sales. And this change makes that actually doable, and it has direct financial impact on their ability to be in Santa Fe and operate the team in a financially responsible way. So the more, my personal position is the more we can recognize the fun of the Fuego, and I'm a huge baseball fan personally, and I think this is accommodating them in a way that makes their season much more viable. I would, for my vote, that's where I'm headed.
Mayor or councilors, I would like to say we have had other matters where there's been minor changes to the caption, where we have decided to vote on them. And we have changed the amendment sheet to have a designation of whether it does change the caption to just make sure that we think about that question. It's not an automatic change to the process. It's something that we should consider, certainly, whenever that happens. But it doesn't, it's not a black or white or an up or down switch necessarily.
We can vote on it or what, or we can vote on holding it over, or we can take Councilor Garcia's concern and either move on or vote on delaying it.
So just go ahead and move it forward if possible.
All right. Any other discussion? There's a motion and there's been discussion, and I think we all are aware of the comments of the city attorney. So Madam Clerk, why don't you call the roll on the motion?
Counselor Faulkner,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell, Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Castro,
Yes.
Counselor Chavez,
Yes.
Mayor Weber,
Yes,
motion passed.
thank you. That was for the amendment. Now we have a main motion as amended.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia, Counselor Lindell, Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Castro,
Yes.
Counselor Chavez,
Yes.
Counselor Faulkner,
Yes.
Mayor Weber,
Yes,
motion passed.
thank you. Thank you, everybody. Could you take us to the next item then, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is matters from the city manager.
Mr. Blair, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilors. Hope you're all doing well. First of all, happy Valentine's Day to all of you and to all those who are celebrating. Want to just flag for everyone a reminder that the city will be open on Monday, President's Day. The city recognizes that holiday the day after Thanksgiving for city employees to have that day off. And so anyone who needs services from the city, we will be open and working that day. Beyond that, just wanted to flag, we are grateful that you all approved the fiscal agent agreements for our fiscal year 21 capital appropriations. Director Oster and her team are working as quick as they can to get those dollars into the coffers here at the city and out into the field. And again, in the coming month, we will be working on getting fiscal agent agreements for both fiscal year 22 and 23 for you to vote on as well. So we'll have more information for that coming very, very soon. And that's it for me tonight, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Madam Clerk, could you take us to the next item, please?
Certainly, Mayor, that is matters from the city attorney.
Madam City Attorney, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, councilors and Mayor. And I would like to echo the thoughts about the interns. We got our 4th intern in the city attorney's office as of last week. They've all been helping out with the inspection of public records, redactions of personal protected information, including social securities and birth dates and that kind of thing. They are going to start working on a project that we're going to collaborate with the clerk's office very soon, which is exciting. And hopefully we'll be able to announce once we figure out the details of that. And we have them from both Santa Fe High and Capitol High. So those, we've got four ladies from a combination of those schools, and they've been extremely helpful. We also had our legislative assistant start last Monday. Christine Spears will bring her in to introduce her soon. But please stop by and say hi if you haven't met her yet. And she's in the same office with Marcy and Annika in the legislative and policy office. Our 2 record specialist positions are still posted through the end of the month, I believe, or close to the end of the month. I was just trying to check the date, but probably for about 2 more weeks. So if you know anyone who would be a good candidate for that, we do ask you to send them our way. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Next item are matters from the city clerk. I have nothing to report. So we'll move on to communications from the governing body.
Okay, then, I'm going to start from my left this time. Counselor Lee Garcia, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. And as we say, happy Valentine's Day to everyone. Nothing much today, but I just want to thank all of the staff and people who work for everyone who works for all the city departments, seeing how they work day in, day out to provide the essential services that the city needs every single day. And so I know that's a difficult task to do each and every day, and just appreciative of everyone. So thanks again. Good night.
Thank you, sir. Counselor Cassidy.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I do not have anything tonight, but just happy Valentine's Day to everybody. I hope everyone's having a wonderful and safe evening tonight. I know this is one of those nights where we always encourage people to make sure that you're driving safely home, because wine is frequently involved. So just want to remind people, safe driving is the number one thing you can do to show love to your fellow drivers. Thanks all.
Nice. Thank you. Counselor Faulkner.
Nothing.
Oh. Counselor Castro, I'm going to come down to you.
All right, sounds good. I actually do have some very exciting news. So as we're talking about internships, we do have an internship with St. John's College. And I've been working there with the Student Workers Coalition, who just took a vote and they voted to unionize through CWA. And so I would like to encourage Mark Roosevelt and Nora Delamatiner, the presidents, to please come to the table and negotiate with the union because they have yet to address that.
Thank you, Counselor. Yes, Counselor.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to wish everyone a happy Valentine's Day, especially to my two Valentines, which is my son and my daughter, who would have been my dates tonight, but they're not. It's not my week. But I send my love to them. I hope they enjoyed the presents I left at their doorstep. And I just want to tell them how grateful I am to have their hearts in my life. So thank you, Mayor.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Counselor Counselor Garcia. I was looking past you. Counselor Garcia, apologies.
Sorries, Mr. Mayor. As well, happy Valentine's Day, everybody. I apologize to my wife. She's dinner on her own with the kiddos tonight. It looks like I'm eating leftovers, so please save me some. And I'm happy to hear about the how well the internship program is working out. I remember the conversation we had, Mayor, and how good of an opportunity it would be to provide these opportunities to the young folks, and not only from the perspective of helping to build the capacity of the city, but how it helps to build up that young person, the skills that they gain, the networking opportunities. I mean, these folks walk away 10 steps taller. And I'm just thankful that it's continuing to grow, and I hope we continue to support it, not only by offering opportunities for internships, but also fiscally, because I know this is a partnership we have with the Santa Fe Public Schools, and there are many of young folks that want to participate as these young kids are talking to each other and they hear about these cool opportunities that are in front of them and these cool positions that they're taking on. It's only helping to ripple effect and attract more folks. So just thankful to hear how it's really building capacity with the city, but also, like I said, I look at it from the perspective of the young folks, and let's continue that momentum. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Bet. Before I go to Counselor Lindell, I want to go to Counselor Mara-Worth, who is present but not among us.
I'm
Mr. Mara-Worth?
fine. I'm fine, Mayor. I don't have anything tonight. Happy
Okay.
Valentine's Day, everyone.
Didn't want to forget you. Counselor Lindell.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, we've collected lots and lots and lots and lots of data, and what we know is love wins every time. And thank you to Maria Sanchez for suffering through 27 years of Valentine's Days with me. I never forget. I don't always come through too well, but the love wins. It wins for every one of us. and putting your arm around somebody and telling them that they matter and that they're loved. Love wins. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor. I would like to second that and send my love to Frances. Because Lord knows she deserves that and a whole lot more. I also do appreciate what Counselor Garcia said in echoing the internship program. It is a national model. We actually have people coming from all over the country to see how we do this. The partnership with the public schools is great. Mr. Villarreal is a terrifically talented individual who is charismatic. And I think last year we had 100 young people in that program. We're shooting for 200 this year. We had 40 employers last year. We're trying to add even more to that. So this is when you think about changing people's lives, this changes people's lives. And that's a Valentine Day message as well. Also, I want to salute those on the city council and over at the other bench who are wearing something red tonight. Props to you all for being way ahead of somebody like me who's totally clueless. So good job to you who see that there's something going on with Valentine's Day and the color red and love for this city. And that's also the big picture. This is a city that we send our love to every day from this dais and from the governing body. Madam Clerk, take us to the next item before I get all choked up.
Certainly, Mayor. Next item is item 16. It's introduction of legislation. 16A is consideration of a resolution sponsored by Mayor Alan Weber, requesting approval of second quarter budget amendments for fiscal year 2024.
And I think the title speaks for itself. What's the next item, Madam Clerk?
Next item is 16B, consideration of a resolution sponsored by Councilor Jamie Casa and Councilor Carol Romero Worth. It's amending the Midtown Community Development Plan to clarify how the city will use weighted evaluation criteria to expressly prioritize the selection of proposals for residential development projects that include on-site affordable housing units and/or exceed the minimum housing affordability and community benefits.
And Councilor Cassett, or excuse me, Councilor Mayorworth, you want to speak to this?
Sure, I'll go ahead and start. Thank you so much. As this says, we really are looking at how we can really clarify how the RFPs are going to be structured to make sure that the prioritization of affordable housing on site and or how developers are going to help us achieve the goals that have been set in the community development plan. I'm sorry, how the RFPs are going to be structured to make sure that developers are aware of those things and that we can really make sure that we are moving towards these goals. We want to make it very clear to the community as well as to anybody who is interested in applying for a project or submitting a proposal for a project, that these are the priorities and that they will be scored in such a way that really makes sure that we continue to honor the incredible work of our Midtown engagement partners who really reached out to the community, and we were able to really reflect what it is they are asking for in this very important development. So just wanted to make sure that that was very clear and providing that structure going forward, especially in case not all of us are here as it is continued. Councilor Mayorworth, anything else?
I think you said it pretty well. The Midtown Community Development Plan was informed by the community. There are ambitious goals in it. Some of it around affordable housing, some of it around other community development priorities that we want to see. And we have a range of tools. And I think this resolution is both to educate, build the understanding of how we use those tools, and it will also give us a few more pieces that I think will help us achieve the goals that are outlined. And I look forward to this conversation as it moves through the process. I do think we wanted to amend the schedule for this. And I don't know, do we have to do that here?
Yes.
Yes, I believe we do.
Yes, the answer is correct.
Okay.
What's your proposed amendment?
If we could just push out, let's see, looking for here they are. If we could push out the date so make it the finance committee, that's, I guess it would be in February, and then make it the governing body meeting of that same week.
Wait a second,
And
hold on.
I think the
schedule
quality,
is-
So
think
the, so it'd be so we'd push out, so if we're going, quality of life on
I was
March
thinking,
6th,
well, actually,
finance on the 11th and governing body on the 13th.
I was thinking you could keep the quality of life meeting if you wanted to, but that's up to you, Counselor.
I will not be there on Wednesday, the
Oh,
21st.
well
So as
then-
long as we're pushing back, let's go ahead and push that one back as well.
So
So sorry.
can somebody?
Yes, it'll be quality of life on March 6th, finance on March 11th, governing body on March 13th. So make a motion to change the schedule to that.
Is there a
Second.
second? All right, there's a motion, there's a second to amend the schedule for the consideration of this measure. Is there discussion about that change in the calendar? No. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll on that, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Castro,
Yes.
Counselor Chavez,
Yes.
Counselor Faulkner, Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Mayor Weber,
Yes,
motion passed.
great. Could you take us to the next item on the agenda then, please?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, the next item will be petitions from the floor.
Very good. So I don't know who's in the Zoom room, but if there is anybody here in the chambers who wishes to have an opportunity to speak to the governing body for 2 minutes on any subject, we don't have any public hearings tonight, so all subjects are open for participation. If you'd come forward, the clerk will keep the clock for us and just take your turn. I'm not sure your microphone is on, sir.
Thank you. Do I get 5 seconds? Thank you, Mayor Weber and members of the council. My name is Greg Mello. I'm with the Los Alamos Study Group. And I would like to say, first of all, that we are disappointed, but not discouraged, that we don't yet have a resolution opposing plutonium pit production in Santa Fe. Some of you have wanted to know more about this subject, and I wanted to say that we are prepared to help you at any time or to debate the issues in any forum you like. If two counselors, at least two, are wanting some briefing, we can schedule that. So, and I brought a few handouts to leave with you. I think there's enough for everyone and the city manager. I wanted to point out the little reason I put the legal analysis at the top is because the resolution that was proposed, it had a legal error, not when we proposed it, but it was added, the error was added in the city, and it didn't seem important because we wanted to get that resolution through. But if it comes back up again, we want you to understand the question of the legality of nuclear weapons. When I was in Washington 2 weeks ago, I heard Laboratory Director Tom Mason say that he was working on the possibility of developing a parcel of land in South Santa Fe for a campus. And we're very interested in knowing more about that. It's something that would be very impactful, whether you think it's positive or negative for the city, but it's certainly very important and should be a matter of public discussion. We have put in an IPRA to try to look at the emails coming from the city of Santa Fe addresses. We have been told that there are 5,550 emails, and these need to be gone through. So we're not going to, the 22nd is when we're supposed to know more about that.
Thank you, sir.
Is that it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you so much.
Usually you get the benefit of a chime, but our chime is muted tonight for some
Right.
reason. But
Best wishes to all of you.
thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much.
Appreciate it.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. My name is Lydia Clark. I'm also a board member of the Los Alamos Study Group. I want to tell you that my family moved to Santa Fe in 1967 when I was a seventh grader. And I've seen a lot of changes, witnessed many politicians come and go. And in all these years, I have not witnessed such a disappointing and heartbreaking display of disregard by this mayor and city council for the safety, health, and welfare of this city. Your continued delay and unwillingness to take action in opposing the plutonium pit production at the Los Alamos National Lab, LANL, and the detrimental and negative effects it will have on Santa Fe and the surrounding areas is shameful at best. The proposal of a resolution to oppose plutonium pit production is not new to this mayor or this council. I've been involved with this effort since 2019, along with many others. Your primary objective seems to be only the so-called economic gain and progressive development that having LANL open a new campus in Santa Fe might bring. We are aware you've been negotiating with LANL for some time to open a new and extended campus in the city or county of Santa Fe without any details, which Mr. Mello just mentioned, even though you have not brought this to the public for discussion. You continue to ignore the fact that the primary mission of LANL is plutonium pit production, the cores of nuclear weapons. No matter what LANL says, a new campus would be for that mission. When did Santa Fe decide to participate in supporting nuclear weapons production? This is a very dangerous path for Santa Fe. By not opposing pit production and allowing LANL to have a new campus in Santa Fe, you're ignoring the safety, health, and welfare of the citizens of Santa Fe and New Mexico, promoting nuclear weapons production and their use, supporting nuclear colonization, risking damage to the environment, and destruction of historical and cultural things that have been here for so long in the name of money. I ask you now, where is your humanity? Say no to plutonium pit production and no to Los Alamos National Lab having a campus in Santa Fe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Abby Knowlton. I was born and raised in Santa Fe, and I currently live here now. I live at Santa Fe Suites, a public housing, as there is no affordable housing here at all. A huge part of that is your support for LANL. And I'm here to speak on behalf of and support of the Los Alamos Study Group, and in supporting the resolution, which I think is just absolutely despicable that nobody has had the courage or the morality to do that, even on an individual level. And I'm wondering, how far on the right and how sold out to corporations do you have to be to not even be able to oppose a plutonium bomb factory in the exact city where you live and supposedly represent? And I know that many of you disingenuously and inaccurately self-identify as progressives or even socialist, yet you refuse to even acknowledge the huge damage that LANL and the military-industrial complex is causing on our city, state, and the whole world. This is a huge embarrassment. You are supporting and enabling nuclear war, nuclear colonialism, environmental destruction, on and on. LANL has already directly caused deadly health issues that have disproportionately affected low-income people of color. And the corporate healthcare system we have in New Mexico is obviously very deficient as it is. So I'm wondering, what are your plans to then provide healthcare for all the inevitable increases in cancer and other serious health issues that will definitely be outcomes of the expansion of LANL? And the fact that the mayor has selected a war profiteer as his advisor and has kept him on despite a lot of protests, kept him on the city payroll, shows the true values of the city council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Evening.
You better pull it up a little bit.
I got it.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Destiny Ray. I'm 21 and I proudly represent Dine, Jimenez, and Hopi communities of Santa Fe, as well as also Yucca, which is Youth United for Climate Crisis. I stand before you on the land of Oge Poge, acknowledging that this land has a history of being stolen and very bloody. And at that point, Native American experiences in New Mexico has been one of enduring suffering for the gains of the military-industrial complex and the financial interests of our government. For over a century, our voices have echoed with injustice, pleading to be acknowledged. And yet, there is still toxic chemicals on our land. And yet, we are still funding LANL and adding to its expansions. This issue goes beyond Los Alamos. It affects Santa Fe, Albuquerque, Espanola, Dine, Jemez, Tewa, Tiwa, Towa, and Caris. It is time for our cries to falling on deaf ears to end. Justice needs to prevail over the clamor of greed, protecting every single New Mexican against the march of corporate greed. And I'm also stunned, appalled, horrified, and very disappointed in every single one of you for not representing us clearly, not protecting us, not saying and not hearing us that we don't want this. We've been very clear. I've been here so many times. It's kind of crazy. I'm here on Valentine's Day. I had to push back a date to be here. And that is insane. I should not have to do that. And I should be able to trust each and every one of you to protect my values, my interests, and my lives, as well as my families and my friends. And I do not feel that. And I'm at a level of distrust where I don't even know if this is going to go anywhere. If talking to you is effective, because I don't feel like it is. And in that, all I have to say is stop sacrificing my people, stop sacrificing my homeland, and my support systems for the financial gain of the industrial military complex in Santa Fe and also in the rest of LANL and New Mexico. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here in the audience in this room who'd like to use the opportunity to speak to the governing body on any matter? How about the Zoom attendees, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mayor, we do have some attendees with their hands raised. We'll start with Stephanie Benenato.
Thank you. Can you hear me clearly?
Pretty clearly, yes, thank you.
Okay. I did just email an addendum to some public comment I made earlier or last night and asked that it be made part of the record since I'm here actually putting it into the record. I do want people to know that there is some kind of committee of employees and non-employees who make decisions or really recommendations about injuries and claims against the city, which I never knew. And I'm kind of startled that there's this multi-layer process and it's not confined to the city attorney's office really, or a contract lawyer. I also think we're wasting resources on contract lawyers who will say that parts of a budget, that they can't produce parts of a budget because it's attorney-client, it's protected by attorney-client privilege, which is totally bogus. I would like to thank Councilor Garcia for his position last week, or his point of view that the Opecos Trail rezone had been approved, and he was looking at the facts and the law at the point in time of last week and making the best decision that he could. And I think we need more of that. As for transparency, again, with streetlights, told there was money to do it, then there wasn't money, then there'd be money in February, but now there's a whole bureaucratic process, including ENN, which is not scheduled for the end of the month. So this doesn't really feel like transparency. And then one more thing is that I really wonder about your abnegation of responsibility. I really feel like that's what City Council's doing. First, it's like we don't have to know about the ethical lapses of staff because that's the executive branch. Then we can't get this in except for Lee Garcia's resolution about the city manager. we can't get legislation introduced because we're waiting for the city attorney, the executive branch, to say it's okay. And now last week I heard that somehow at least a couple, maybe one or two members of council don't feel that they have enough expertise to be the highest decision maker in a quasi-judicial process. And I think that is a very clear responsibility of a city council member. And I'm a little shocked that you are trying to push off that responsibility. And if you don't feel competent, I'm not really sure why you ran for the job.
Thank you.
Or perhaps you should think about staying in. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beninato. Thank you. Who else is in the Zoom room?
Mr. Mayor, we have Nira.
Okay. Can you hear us? Are you unmuted? You have the floor.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly. Thank you.
Thank you. I wrote to all of you several weeks ago about my absolute concern with your lack of concern regarding 30 bombs a year at a place about 60 miles from Santa Fe. I told my son about the letters I wrote and what I had said. He was quiet for a moment and replied, "You certainly didn't gain any friends there." I wasn't looking for friends. I chose to let you know that you should expel the money changers from the temple, our temple, the land of enchantment. With 3 contaminations of employees within the last 2 months, how far is contaminations from explosions? How could you put Tesuque Pueblo, Kawaki, Nambe, Santa Clara, San Ildefonso at risk with an accidental, quote, contamination, as well as a, quote, accidental explosion? And what about the Espanola Valley, Chimayo, La Masia, Velarde, and all the other small communities a bomb away? Is there no part of you left with human decency at its core rather than money? Or do we have to stand before you and beg for common sense? Or do we join Dr. Oppenheimer, who quote, "I have become death, the destroyer of worlds." This was after the test of the first atom bomb. Are you really so close to moneymonger developments and developers who, besides all else, want tax breakers for their ungodly endeavors in building not 1, not 2, not 3, not even 4, but 30 bombs a year? Do you really have to review patently false documents to support this monstrous project? Does hate have such a stronghold in our world that we need 30 bombs just in case? Have you seen photos of Hiroshima and Nagasaki? If you have, look again. If you haven't, look now. Imagine the cathedral burnt to a crisp, downtown Santa Fe exterminated accidentally. And if on purpose bombs are deployed, what part of the world would be at risk? Even today, it looks like Iran, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Lebanon, at the very least. What about China? Do they
Thank you.
deserve an accident?
I'm
Really?
sorry, your time has expired, but thank you.
My time has not expired, and you're welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else with their hand up? Let's give them an opportunity.
Yes, Nickel P.
Hi, my name's Nick Hill, and I want to implore the City Council of Santa Fe to stand on the side of peace and justice, as more and more cities around the country, alongside labor unions, elected officials, and other prominent voices, call for a ceasefire in Gaza. As the war continues into its 5th month, we must stand on the side of international law and the countless people who have suffered horrific losses as the death toll surpasses 30,000 people. Gaza may seem like a distant city, But I've personally talked to countless Santa Feans who are Palestinian and have close family who have suffered or died. As Israel attacks the city of Rafah, one of the last so-called safe zones in Gaza, Santa Fe cannot afford to stay silent any longer. We must stand with the countless Jewish and Palestinian voices that call for a permanent ceasefire, the freeing of all hostages, allowing humanitarian aid into the conflict zone, and ending weapon shipments to human rights abusers. Please stand on the side of peace and justice once again. And the world is watching. Again, it may seem like a very distant conflict, but I think adding our voice to many of the other cities that have already spoken forward will make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else in the Zoom room with a hand up?
No, Mayor, there are no other attendees with their hand up.
Okay. Thank you. Could you take us to the next item then?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, next item is 21 appointments. 21A are appointments for the Water Conservation Committee. Appointment for Navona Gallegos, filling an unexpired term of July 2025. Brandon Vea, an appointment filling an unexpired term of July 2025. Therese T.C. Richmond, an appointment filling an unexpired term of July 2024. And Autumn Leaker, a change in position to county representative, filling an unexpired term of July 2024.
Move to approve.
The motion
Second.
and several seconds. I think Councilor Michael Garcia was first to second. Is there discussion of these appointees? Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. Counselor Lindell,
She has exited and needs to be excused for the remainder of the meeting.
Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Castro,
Yes.
Counselor Chavez,
Yes.
Counselor Faulkner. Yes. Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Mayor Weber,
Yes,
motion passed.
thank you. And the next item, Madam Clerk?
Next item is 21B, appointment to the Ethics and Campaign Review Board. Appointing Andrew Black with a term ending July 2025.
Move to approve.
There's a motion and a second. Is there discussion of this appointment? Could you call the roll on this, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Castro,
Yes.
Counselor Chavez,
Yes.
Counselor Faulkner. Yes. Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Mayor Weber,
Yes,
motion passed.
thank you. And I believe we have one more under appointments, Madam Clerk.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, 21C is an appointments to the Historic District Review Board. Jennifer Beachside, reappointment with a term ending January 2026. And John Bienvenu, reappointment, term ending January 2026.
Motion to approve.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I hear a second. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll on this motion?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Castro,
Yes.
Counselor Chavez,
Yes.
Counselor Faulkner,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Mayor Weber,
Yes,
motion passed.
thank you, Madam Clerk. I believe that completes our agenda for this evening, and we are